There's a child sitting in the back of every classroom who knows things the teacher never taught. Not because they're gifted, but because they're watching. While everyone else is talking, performing, competing for attention, this child is absorbing everything: the subtle cruelty between friends, the teacher's unconscious favorites, the hidden rules that really govern the world. The quiet kid isn't just shy. They're processing reality at a depth that would exhaust most adults. Every social interaction is data. Every loud person's behavior is a study in what they're compensating for. Every group dynamic is a lesson in power, belonging, and the price of admission to normalcy. Society treats quiet kids like broken loud kids, as if the goal is to fix them, to bring them out of their shell, to make them participate. Nobody considers that maybe they're not in a shell. Maybe they're in an observation tower, seeing things from a vantage point the ground-level people can't access. The psychology of a quiet kid begins with sensory overwhelm. They're not antisocial. They're hypersocial, taking in so much social information that they need silence to process it. A loud kid experiences a party as fun. A quiet kid experiences it as 1,000 micro-interactions, each loaded with meaning, subtext, and emotional data that needs sorting. I was that quiet kid. Recess wasn't play, it was anthropology. I could map the entire social hierarchy of our grade, tell you who was secretly in pain, who was one rejection away from cruelty, who was performing confidence while dying inside. I knew which friendships would implode, which couples were doomed, which bullies were terrified. Not because I was psychic, but because I was silent. And in silence, you hear what noise drowns out. The quiet kid often develops what psychologists call overexcitabilities, intensities of perception that make ordinary life feel like high definition. Emotional overexcitability means feeling others' emotions as if they're your own. Intellectual overexcitability means your mind never stops connecting, analyzing, questioning. Sensory overexcitability means fluorescent lights feel like assault, loud voices feel like violence, and a normal school day feels like running a marathon. Adults mistake this for weakness. Too sensitive, they say, needs to toughen up. But sensitivity isn't weakness. It's processing power. The quiet kid isn't too sensitive. Everyone else is insufficiently aware. They're not overwhelmed because they're fragile. They're overwhelmed because they're processing 10 times the information everyone else is oblivious to. The inner world of a quiet kid is often richer than their outer world will ever be. They have entire universes in their heads, stories, theories, connections, possibilities. They're not bored when they're alone. They're finally free to explore territories that social interaction interrupts. They're not lonely in solitude. They're lonely in crowds where they have to perform normalcy instead of being themselves. School is particularly brutal for quiet kids. It's designed for extroverts. Group projects, class participation, presentation skills. The quiet kid who writes brilliant essays but won't raise their hand is deemed problematic. The one who solves problems in their head but can't explain their process out loud is marked as not engaged. The educational system rewards performance over depth, volume over insight, social ease over intellectual complexity. Teachers often worry about the wrong things with quiet kids. They worry they're not making friends, but don't see the one deep friendship that matters more than 20 superficial ones. They worry they're not participating, but don't notice they're the only one who actually understood the deeper implications of the lesson. They worry they're isolated, but don't realize isolation is where they recharge from the exhausting performance of being around others. The quiet kid develops coping mechanisms that look like problems. Daydreaming isn't distraction, it's integration of complex information. Reading during lunch isn't antisocial, it's choosing the company of minds over the chatter of peers. Sitting alone isn't loneliness, it's the only time they can hear their own thoughts clearly. Bullies often target quiet kids, but not always for the reasons people think. Yes, they seem weak, unlikely to fight back. But there's something deeper. The quiet kid's silence is a mirror that reflects back the bully's noise for what it is. Fear. The quiet kid's depth highlights the bully's superficiality. Their stillness reveals the bully's chaos. They're targeted not just because they're vulnerable, but because their existence is an indictment. The quiet kid often develops extraordinary emotional intelligence, but a peculiar kind. They understand emotions intellectually before they understand them experientially. They can analyze everyone else's feelings with surgical precision, but might be mystified by their own. They become teenage therapists for troubled friends, wise beyond their years about others' pain, while disconnected from their own needs. Parents of quiet kids often make two mistakes. Either they worry too much, treating quietness like a disease that needs curing, dragging them to social activities that drain them, pushing them to be someone they're not. Or they neglect them, assuming quiet means fine, missing the storms raging beneath still surfaces, the anxieties that have no words, the depressions that look like contentment. The quiet kid's relationship with friendship is complex. They don't collect friends like baseball cards. They might have one or two people who really see them, and that's enough. But these friendships are deep, almost telepathic. They're built on shared silence, understood references, the relief of not having to perform. Losing one of these rare connections is devastating in a way that losing 20 casual friendships wouldn't be for louder kids. Academic life is a paradox for quiet kids. They often excel intellectually, but suffer socially. They write brilliant papers but freeze during presentations. They understand complex concepts but can't engage in classroom banter. They're simultaneously the smartest kid in class and the one teachers worry about most. Their report cards say things like, "Brilliant, but needs to participate more." As if participation is the rent they must pay for being intelligent. The quiet kid often discovers books like others discover drugs. Here are minds they can commune with without the exhaustion of social interaction. Authors become their real teachers, fictional characters their truest friends. They're not escaping reality, they're finding a reality that matches their depth. In books, people have inner monologues. Complexity is explored. Silence has meaning. Adolescence is particularly brutal. The teenage social economy runs on performance, confession, and public emotion. The quiet kid who keeps their depths private is seen as weird, secretive, potentially dangerous. After Columbine, every quiet kid became suspect. It's always the quiet ones, people say, not understanding that quiet kids are far more likely to implode than explode, to hurt themselves rather than others. The quiet kid often develops what I call emotional constipation, so much feeling with nowhere to go. They can't express it verbally like talkers do. They might not even have words for it. It builds up, creates pressure, manifests as anxiety, depression, or physical symptoms. They're drowning in feelings while appearing emotionless, screaming internally while silent externally. Creative expression becomes crucial. The quiet kid who finds art, music, writing, or any form of expression that bypasses verbal communication often flourishes. Suddenly they have a language for their inner world. The student who can't speak in class writes poetry that makes teachers weep. The kid who won't perform in groups creates art that stops people cold. They're not finding their voice. They're finding their language. The tragedy is how many quiet kids never find that outlet, never discover that their different processing style is a gift, not a deficit. They spend their childhoods being told to speak up, participate more, be more outgoing. They internalize the message that their natural way of being is wrong. They either force themselves into exhausting extroversion or retreat further into isolation. The quiet kid's relationship with adults is often more comfortable than with peers. Adults are more likely to appreciate depth, to engage in meaningful conversation, to not require constant social performance. The quiet kid who seems weird among peers might bloom in the company of a thoughtful teacher, a patient grandparent, an adult who remembers being quiet themselves. Technology has been both salvation and curse for quiet kids. Social media allows carefully crafted communication without real-time performance pressure. Online communities provide connection with similar minds across distance. But it also creates new pressures to document life, to maintain digital personas, to be available 24/7. The quiet kid who used to find refuge in anonymity now faces pressure to build a personal brand. The quiet kid often grows up to be the adult who still feels like they're watching life from the outside. They might have learned to perform extroversion professionally, but it's exhausting. They schedule solitude like others schedule social events. They have a public self that functions well enough, but their real self only emerges in private, with trusted people, or in creative expression. Many quiet kids grow up to be writers, artists, researchers, counselors, professions where deep processing is an asset. They become the adults who notice what others miss, who ask the questions others don't think to ask, who create from depths others don't know exist. But they carry scars from childhoods spent being told they were too quiet, too sensitive, too internal. The quiet kid who survives childhood with their sensitivity intact is rare. Most learn to armor up, shut down, or fake extroversion. But those who maintain their depth while developing resilience become extraordinary adults. They're the ones who can sit with pain without running, who can hold complexity without simplifying, who can witness without judging, who can create from authentic depths rather than surface performance. If you were a quiet kid, know this: you weren't broken. You were processing reality at a depth that others couldn't handle. Your silence wasn't absence, it was presence. Your solitude wasn't isolation, it was integration. Your sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was perception. You were gathering data for a lifetime of understanding that talkers will never achieve. If you have a quiet kid, here's what they need: recognition that their quietness is a way of being, not a problem to solve. Space to process without pressure to share. Creative outlets for their inner world. Protection from a culture that worships extroversion. And most importantly, the message that their depth is a gift, even if the world isn't always deep enough to receive it. The psychology of a quiet kid is the psychology of depth in a shallow world. It's the burden and gift of seeing more, feeling more, understanding more than can ever be expressed in the currency of small talk and social performance. They're not failed extroverts. They're deep processors in a world that rewards quick responses over thoughtful ones, volume over insight, presence over depth. The quiet kid knows something important: that the most profound truths can't be spoken. The deepest connections transcend words, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. They're not missing out on life by being quiet. They're experiencing dimensions of life that only silence can reveal.